Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go up to all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. All right, guys. Today's date, January 15th, 2025, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense of it all. Before we get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast since we pride ourselves on being one, which means we only give the most certified information from the most reputable sources. We do not do sensational news like Fox News, Newsmax, the media. News media, the Blaze. That number keeps growing, by the way. But anyway, we don't do that. We give you the facts from places that you can trust. At the same time, we do try to maintain our professionalism. Not trying to curse, but words do fly. At the same time, guys, we do try to watch what we show because we do want to be mindful of our viewers, but we also want to show the truth. So there may be some things that might be too graphic for younger viewers. So viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So there is really no other way to start this outside of the title that I gave this. If Michelle Obama, FLOTUS, the first lady, will always be my first lady. No disrespect to Dr. Jill Biden, but Michelle has always been the first lady. If Michelle Obama, Mrs. Obama, I want to say Dr. Obama. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. If the Queen has decided that she doesn't want to go to the inauguration of one Dorito in less than a week, why should America? Just saying.
Let's remember that Trump didn't attend Biden's inauguration 4 years ago. But what are you learning about the former First Lady and her decision to skip the event on Monday?
Yeah, and it wasn't just Donald Trump who skipped that inauguration. Melania Trump skipped it as well, Michelle Obama's counterpart. So when you talk about inauguration tradition, kind of has to start there. But, I think a lot of people were wondering last week when we didn't see Michelle Obama sitting in the pews at the funeral for Jimmy Carter, whether she would actually attend the inauguration this week. Both of those events would have brought her face to face with Donald Trump. They said last week that scheduling conflicts prevented her from attending that event. They're not actually elaborating on why she won't be attending next week's inauguration, which I think probably tells you everything you need to know. Michelle Obama has made no secret about her feelings towards Donald Trump. She has actually said that she believes that Trump could have put her family's safety at risk with some of his rhetoric, including the birther lies that he was spewing about a decade ago. She also has talked about how difficult it was for her to sit through Trump's first inauguration in 2017. We all saw her with kind of a strained look on her face. And she actually said in a podcast a couple years ago that once she got on the aircraft and was flying out of Washington, she just broke down in tears from the weight of it all. So I think all of that combined probably makes it not something of a surprise that she won't be at the inauguration next week. But I should mention we did hear from the other former first ladies, Laura Bush and Hillary Clinton.
I'm going to be honest. I'm not really worried about that. Let's be honest. Michelle Obama, a first lady who has done more than, honestly, the last 4 Republican presidents. I would almost say her work as first lady is almost equal to that of a previous president. The thing I'm getting at here is, guys, if Mrs. Obama decided that she does not want to go to this idiot's inauguration, it's not tradition. They say it's tradition. Oh, well, we have to go to this. All presidents have to attend the inauguration. Really? Because I could have sworn when a black man was becoming president, a lot of people were like, well, I'm going to skip it. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to sit there. That's not my president. We're supporting a Kenyan Muslim terrorist being president. And mostly it came from Fox News. But a former first lady has decided, I wouldn't even give the excuse scheduling conflicts. And I know, Mrs. Obama, you believe in when they go low, we fly high. And I respect that woman because of her poise, her grace, her strength, her confidence, her standing on business while under fire. Me, I am petty. I will turn around and sit there and tell you exactly why I don't want to attend that man's presidential inauguration. Number one, he was going to complain whether he won or lost. Number two, everybody that sat around him during President Carter's funeral, he has accused, made fun of, said things that were not true, and just grifted his way off of their names. And yet those same people had to sit around this man while former President Obama had to be the unlucky person to sit right next to this idiot. So I don't blame Michelle. I don't blame her. I just wish that, if Michelle Obama doesn't want to go to the inauguration, hell, America shouldn't either. But then again, a lot of idiots made their choice in picking Dorito. A lot of them are right now in the find out phase and wishing they could take back their votes. Too late, guys. You put us in here, and now we're dealing with it. So, move right along, guys. Speaking of other things, TikTok. Well, if you believe it, if nothing happens, 4 days from now, the ban will go into place because Republicans believe, and also, let me point that out, Republicans and some Democrats who voted for the ban believe that the Chinese are using this app to spy on us. Well, all I can say is America must hate competition, because when Facebook /Meta/Instagram was doing it too, nobody had a problem. When your information was being sold as data to where other people can send you things you didn't ask for, government didn't have a problem. But since TikTok and its popularity and the fact that people have actually had careers in stores and have actually found other ways of revenue, now it's a problem. Because the Chinese, which they have yet to produce a single shred of evidence that is true, are coming to somehow steal our information, influence elections, things of that nature. When really it should be Russia we should be looking at, but I digress. But there is some hope. And I say some hope because of two reasons. Number one, Massachusetts senator is actually going to be moving forward with a proposal that would actually extend the TikTok ban. So technically, if it does go through, it does get approved by at the time Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey. If it is approved, this would actually extend the ban, and of course, TikTok would still be available to the U.S. Now, again, this is all a big if. It still has to be voted on, approved, and passed. With the 119th Congress in, with Republicans actually having the House and the Senate majorities, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit leery of this, because I think this is just the last salvo into where possibly we might be seeing an actual app get banned from the US. Now, again, for all those that are wondering, it's like, what did TikTok actually do? Well, for all those that don't remember, at first TikTok, because it is owned by a Chinese company, Americans didn't like that. American governments didn't like that. And the government sat there and said, well, either you would sell your company to a US-based company, or we'll ban it. TikTok, of course, ByteDance, that actually owns it, was simply saying, well, why do we need to do that? Because, again, your fear is root-based, at the same time you produce nothing. And even Trump, who believes he's a big star on TikTok, tried to save it, but again, to alas, no avail. So, if the ban does go in place 4 days from now, yes, TikTok will be banned. Although I'm just saying VPNs work. At the same time, guys, there's also another reason why TikTok may be getting extended, because for a lot of people who are not very familiar with apps, when you kill one, another one shows up. A lot of people are going to this Red Note app. Again, Red Note, acting in a similar way to TikTok, is actually welcoming those from TikTok to it. You probably have heard of another site called Lemon8 that is also welcoming. So, guys, I keep pointing this out when it comes to TikTok and things that nature when it comes to apps. For a lot of people, when something is actually being put down, something will always take its place. Just like in the days of Napster. When Napster went down, there was 100 different other sites that went up to where people still continue to get whatever they wanted to get off the internet. Again, this Red Note is the same way. So again, also held by a Chinese company, which I still think is funny as hell. So you actually still, guys, and I hate to say this too, but yes, if TikTok is banned, it is not the end of the world. It's just the fact that a lot of people have made their lifestyle changes, businesses, things of that nature off the platform. And with that being gone, so goes your opportunities and revenue streams. But again, that is still all up in the air. We do not know whether or not that TikTok will be banned or extended, but we will follow it as it comes along. But honestly, as a person that's enjoyed TikTok, it has actually done some great things. It has actually allowed a different source of news to come through, because a lot of people get their news from TikTok. People have been using the TikTok store because of the great deals they get from there. So commerce is good. Some folks have actually had TikTok stores and even gotten commissions from selling to people. Again, all great things. It is amazing to me that Republicans who are championing American business and commerce, things of that nature, are the same ones calling for TikTok's downfall. It is completely and utterly amazing to me about that. But we'll follow that as it comes along. I personally saw no problem with TikTok because, hey, everybody's got your information. The American government just doesn't like competition. That being said, speaking of the American government, Special Counsel Jack Smith has by now released his report on Donald Trump's investigation. And for a lot of it, it's really pretty much I told you so. And at the same time, thank the voters, the idiots that voted for Trump, because we might have actually had a conviction.
In terms of the thought process and the work product that will be contained in this report.
Well, Laura, first of all, as you said, Donald Trump spent much of the day making really meritless arguments to try to block this release. He was rejected twice today by Judge Cannon, including once about an hour ago. And now here we are. We have this post-midnight release. Now, the report is going to be in two main parts. The second part is not a surprise, and you just showed the viewers that with the table of contents. This is going to be essentially like a prosecution memo. This is going to be a detailed, nuanced breakdown of here's the evidence we relied on, here's the charges we brought, we know what the charges are, but here's how we justify them, and here's why this was a just and fair prosecution. Sort of the standard stuff that we've seen in other special counsel reports. What's different about this one, and you were just discussing this with Evan, is the introduction. I mean, this is far more dramatic, far more, frankly, defensive by Jack Smith. He quotes John Adams. He quotes, highfalutin language from prior attorneys general. He really wraps himself in the righteousness that he sees around this investigation. So that is something unlike what we've seen before. Although I will say, we got another special counsel report earlier today from the David Weiss who prosecuted Hunter Biden, which actually has a similar introduction. So usually special counsel reports are quite dry. They're just facts and law. But the two that we got today are unique in that both of them are very defensive and really strike back at the people who've been criticizing them. Jack Smith strikes back aggressively at comments that Donald Trump has made, and to a lesser extent, but still palpable, the Hunter Biden prosecutors strike out at Joe Biden for his criticisms.
So long story short, because the actual report is out, and again, it is amazing to me that this is the second time, the absolute second time that a report was done on Trump in his interference, and the reports showed that, yes, he is beyond guilty. And all I can stand and say is, for a lot of people that don't remember, this isn't the first time. March 2019, the reason I bring that up, Robert Mueller, in his report, when Trump was president and William Barr was the attorney general at the time, special investigator Robert Mueller and his team had finished compiling the report. And then William Barr decided to redact it and then give it out to the American people. Here's the problem with both Robert Mueller and Jack Smith's reports. They both had sat there and said, yeah, Trump knew and was all the way involved.
Presidential candidate Donald J. Trump. And second, a Russian intelligence service conducted computer intrusion operations against entities, employees, and volunteers working on the Clinton campaign. Translation: Russia used the internet to fool American voters and hackers to attack Democratic computer networks.
According to Mueller's report, the Russian campaign began in mid-2014. That's when employees of what's known as the Internet Research Agency first came to the U.S. to gather the material that they would later use in their elaborate social media postings. This is the IRA's headquarters in St. Petersburg, Russia.
By the end of 2016, the Russians had set up fake social media accounts that reached millions of voters, aimed at promoting Trump or dividing Americans.
The Russians created fake hashtags like #KidsForTrump. They bought thousands of online ads. They impersonated U.S. citizens and set up real political rallies, like a 2015 Confederate rally in Houston. They made posters like this one of Miners for Trump to promote a rally in Pittsburgh in 2016.
The Mueller report lays out how this ensnared real American political operatives, including the Trump campaign and its allies. Donald Trump Jr. and top advisors like Kellyanne Conway all retweeted these fake accounts. Let's go to page 34 for an example. It shows a 2016 Facebook post from candidate Trump himself, where he thanked organizers and promoted a rally in Miami. But Mueller writes that Russians in the IRA organized that rally and even used a fake Facebook account to brag that Mr. Trump posted about our event.
According to the report.
So we're going to leave it right there because, like I said, guys, that just to give an example, that was the Mueller report from March 2019. Combined with Jack Smith's report that just came out, you had two special investigators look into this. Two special investigators spent a year plus looking into Trump and seeing whether or not he influenced elections. And the evidence is there. And the thing about it is, Trump depended on the presidency to basically keep him out of jail. Why? Because it's the opinion of the Department of Justice not to indict a sitting president. And I've still don't understand that. Why in the world are we the only country to where, outside of Russia, China, but why is our country, whenever the president is guilty as all get out, does our Department of Justice and Attorney General not step in and say, no, we keep saying no one's above the law, not even the president, but yet you have the Supreme Court saying that any actions a president has done while in office, he might be immune from. To which Trump is trying to say, me, and yet at the same time, Trump is not president. But in less than a week, he will be president. And so, again, he's protected. And I'm just thinking to myself, what is it that the Attorney General needs to where, or at least one that actually has guts, to turn around and say, no, we are basically going to move forward with putting the president on trial. And until then, he cannot be president. Until these cases, and I think it just bothers me. Why is it that all these cases that he has out there does not prevent him? Or why doesn't the Attorney General step in? Because at this point, it's the Attorney General. Madam Vice President Harris has done her job and certified the votes. But the Attorney General should step in and say, wait a minute, you have several criminal felony cases out there. We cannot have you be president until these cases are resolved. Why is it that we can't do that? Why is it that the Attorney General doesn't take a stand and say, well, that we have to have these cases cleared? You're not above the law. You are not going to use the seat of the president to escape these crimes, which he has done. Those cases have been pushed back. His Georgia election interference case, Miss Fannie Willis has been taken off as the lead prosecutor, because they try to get rid of her because of her relationship with a prosecutor on her team. They're trying. I mean, his payments, as far as hush money payments case, although he was convicted, basically led to nothing because no jail time was added to it. Which still is like, what was the whole point of going through the case anyway if he's not seeing his sentencing? And let's not think about the fact that he is also guilty of fraud on property investments in Manhattan, to which that's still out there, which he's trying to appeal because there's a $430 million settlement to where one Manhattan DA is ready to basically take everything, including Trump Tower. Not to forget the fact that down in Florida, he's still facing the warehouse of documents that he kept that he thought he could. So, guys, the point I'm getting at here is, for all of this going on, How in the world is this man in less than a week about to walk up, be sworn in, and be president again? I am trying to figure that out. But here's another thing you got to figure out, though. And I'll give this to former RNC chair Michael Steele. Because, again, do we really need to be civil with Trump? Michelle Obama is being civil by not attending. However, I had asked this question because I'm also asked this question to Morning Joe, because ever since he visited Trump, his tune did a 180. But Michael still brings up a wonderful question. Why do we need to be civil with the POS?
For some people out there. But actually, if you sit there and you talk to somebody,
it's a different thing.
And you're civil to somebody. No, it's all part of the same thing. When he wants to speak out, does he have a better chance to pick up the phone and call on a personal level and say, I've got a real problem with this. Let me tell you what you're about to do. Let me tell you why this is going to blow up in your face, and the blowback's not going to be worth it because I know I sat there.
That works if Joe Biden is calling George Bush, or George Bush is calling Barack Obama. Right. You know, the moment that whole thing yesterday was illustrative of how that group of former presidents look at one of their own. Yeah. Okay, that to me is the thing about yesterday, how they look at him. And so I agree with you, Joe. The whole civil thing works, but you know, civility is a two-way street.
We all know that.
Let's just see what the civility is coming the other way, because I bet you it isn't. And that's going to be the test of this administration out of the gate with those four of the former presidents sitting there. If you want their advice and you seek their advice, that's an open door to civility.
Right.
But if there is no inclination from you that you care for their advice, that you want their advice, and in fact you think that they're a POS, right? Mm-hmm. Then I don't know where the civility thing is going to get off.
Digest their advice.
The ground.
Michael, I'm not saying we're walking.
So I'll give it to Michael Steele, because Morning Joe was going to turn around, and of course, now that he's kissed the ring, he's going to basically dance around and stare and say, well, no, we should still be civil. Biden found a way to be civil. Obama found a way to be civil. And I'm sorry, you do not have to be civil with Donald Trump. You don't. There's no civility in him because he's too busy trying to puff himself up or trying to grift off his followers. Reason being, going to his favorite spot in Fox News and basically admitting something we've already known.
Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it? You get indicted and your poll numbers go up. When people get indicted, your poll numbers go down. Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it? You get indicted and your poll numbers go up. When people get indicted, your poll numbers go down.
Yeah, he said it. He literally sat there and said, whoever heard of being indicted for interfering with a presidential election when you have every right to do it? I'm sorry, Department of Justice? Hello? He just sat there and believes you have every right to turn around and interfere in a presidential election that you're a part of. He just sat there and said, I see no problem with interfering with it. This is the same man who, during his presidential term, knowing his end was coming, and turned around there and said, oh, they're going to rig the election. They're going to rig it against me. I'm going to tell you guys right now, they're going to do their best to get rid of me. They're going to make the votes are going to be all the way messed up. He was already muddying the water because he already knew at the end of his first term he was not going to get a consecutive second. But now that he is getting another term, you see that he's no longer talking about the fact that the votes are rigged. The election is rigged. that they're just out to make sure that I'm not president again. They're afraid of me. Notice how all of that rhetoric is gone now. But all it's about, oh, well, I'm going to do all this. I have 100 executive orders. We're going to close the border. We're going to reverse a lot of things that Biden and Democrats put into place. It is amazing to me how he does a 180 because he's basically saved from being in jail. But even more so that he turned around and sat there and said, yeah, you could interfere in an election because you can. It is scary to me that the only ones that are picking this up are like you and me watching the news, that this man can turn around and say all these things with zero accountability and zero consequence. So this is the first time I'm going to agree with the former Republican, Michael Steele. Yes, you do not have to be civil to Trump because Trump can't spell civil. He basically, every time he hears civil, he hears another court and goes for the lawyer for litigation. The man does not have a decent bone in his body. So therefore, I'm sorry, Mrs. Obama, with all due respect, we cannot fly high with Trump. We must hold him accountable because our justice system is not. But moving right along, guys, to the fires in LA as they are still going on. We hope to those that are in that area, may you be safe. Hopefully you've evacuated. And hopefully you got out of there in time. Also, shout out to all the firefighters and first response personnel, emergency services, volunteer firefighters from prisons, including other countries, because Ukraine is sending us firefighters. It is amazing that in such a country like Ukraine, we've been helping for this long time, looked at us and said, yeah, y'all need help. But again, shout out to those firefighters. Hopefully, guys, you are definitely getting the praise that you should have. No different than nurses and doctors and first responders during the first parts of COVID. You guys are the real MVPs. But that being said, there's another problem that's happening out in California right now with these wildfires. Price gouging on homes as people are just trying to find a roof over their heads.
Bring a real estate agent, Robin Walpert, who's based in Pacific Palisades, and she's been helping people find housing. Robin, I know this has been such an incredibly difficult time for your entire community. And then now you're dealing with this. I mean, walk us through what you're seeing from these leasers who are flouting laws as people are just trying to look to put a roof over their head.
Yeah, thanks. It's disheartening to say the least, especially at a time like this when our friends and family and clients and our kids' classmates, everyone is without resources and homes, and it's an unkind thing we're dealing with right now, really.
So, Robin, what are the challenges at hand as you work with people who are looking for housing? I know also simply the home prices for people who may be thinking maybe I'll buy a different house have also apparently gone through the roof.
So I haven't focused so much on price increases for sale, but our inventory was already scarce before the fires broke out. But within 24 hours from the breakout, it was a real scramble in town where people were wanting to take some action, get some roots down, find some stability for kids, pets, grandma, grandpa, everything. And really within 36 to 48 hours, it was quite competitive, and it was pretty chaotic in town, trying to find housing that doesn't exist at the scale that we needed. If we've got 95,000 something displaced people right now, it's a concern.
What stories have you heard from people as they've tried to go about navigating this?
I think for the showings that I've gone to with clients, it's been arriving to a property and it's a carousel of crying families, 13 applications, 17 applications, 25 applications, all for the same home, which has forced some people to come up and be highly competitive. A lot of it is budgets that they have from their insurance companies. And at this point, desperation, shock, despair, let's just throw it all in the pot and find something that we can turn into home. Alternatively, we have had a price gouging problem that is turning our regular normal families who don't have that kind of budget into a terrible situation. I was put in touch with a homeowner direct through a friend. She said, I have a opportunity where I can go and stay with my dad. I'd like to open up my home in Santa Monica. It's lovely. It's 3 bedrooms. It's 1.5 baths. It's in this neighborhood in Santa Monica. And I was so grateful for a moment until she said, but I would like to charge. And she threw out a number that was 4 times greater than a normal rent for a home like that. So if a home like that was renting for 10 grand on the normal, she was asking me for 40. I dismissed it because it was a heartbreak. Aside from illegal, it just felt really gross that this was something in this kind of moment where someone thought that they could maybe, take advantage of this situation. It's awful.
Really, really awful. Robin Walpert, thanks so much for the work that you are doing to try and help.
So let's think about that for a second, guys. That literally and figuratively, that with everything going on in Los Angeles right now with the wildfires, that you would think there would be some decency. Nope, price gouging. And even though that's a natural disaster, and yes, for a lot of people, it's like, well, it's California. It's that liberal California. It's all their policies and whatnot. Before we get into that, let's talk about common decency. That there are a lot of people right now who are displaced, homes are burned down, lost possessions, things of that nature, who just simply want a roof over their heads. It is amazing to me that there are not laws against this to where price gouging cannot go into effect, simply put, because the demand is there. You can't ask for 4 or 5 times more than what your house or a home or what your house or apartment is worth to where you would rent or you would sell to someone else simply because they're desperate. That to me is beyond wrong. That to me really should be looked into, and there should be laws against it. But again, price gouging is one of those things. And also, housing is a big thing. Do I expect Dorito to cover it? No, I don't. I mean, Madam Vice President Harris had a plan. She had a plan to actually tackle housing, and it was a great plan. But, with Dorito, he has concepts. He doesn't have a plan. He has concepts. So, again, for all those in California, if you are trying to find a home, please be aware. Please be vigilant. And for all those that are just trying to jack up the rent just to make some extra scratch, there's a special place in hell for y'all. That also being said, I want to get to the other side. Because, a couple of people looked at California's wildfires and was like, oh, well, that's just y'all. That's just the chickens coming home to roost because it's California. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the gift that keeps on giving, unfortunately, has sat there and said, why don't they use geoengineering like cloud seeding to bring down rain on the wildfires in California? They know how to do it. Guys, I wish I could make this up. Why don't they use geoengineering like cloud seeding to bring rain down on the wildfires in California? They know how to do it. This is the same woman that believed in Jewish space lasers, said everything of a QAnon tinfoil hat crazy person would say, not understanding that somehow she was also elected back to the House of Representatives. Because there are people like her that are idiots that'll vote for her. Guys, cloud seeding doesn't work that way. At the same time, it's kind of effective since California's been in kind of a drought for a couple of years. So yes, when you've been in a drought, the ground is dry. You have plenty of forestation. Those, unfortunately, are the elements for a fire to occur. Although I'm still of the variety that the fire was actually set on purpose. But again, still being investigated. But Marjorie Taylor Greene is not the only person that has his own theories of what to expect. Mel Gibson, I know, I am asking for this punishment, decided that he would go on one of the three-headed douches, Laura Ingram's show on Fox News, and give his opinion.
Problems that sort of baffle the mind as far as why they do things.
Mel Gibson on Fox News primetime after losing his home in the California fires.
And then in the events like this, you sort of look, oh, is it on purpose? Which it's an insane thing to think. But one begins to ponder whether or not there is a purpose in mind. What could it be? I don't know. Do they want the state empty? I don't know.
Conspiracy theories spreading like wildfire.
This is an obvious land grab. They get them out of their homes this way, and then they can build whatever they want to build.
From the common refrain that it's all part of a government plot.
This is siege by design.
To suspected AI-generated video and images falsely showing the fires approaching the iconic Hollywood sign. Fact-checkers working for Meta have been debunking some of the misinformation on Facebook and Instagram.
Hey everyone.
But last week, Mark Zuckerberg announced this.
We're going to get rid of fact-checkers and replace them with community notes.
Replacing fact-checkers with community notes, a form of crowdsourced fact-checking that is used on X. But critics say Zuckerberg shouldn't be trying to emulate X, pointing to viral misinformation on that platform that goes unchecked. Like this post, viewed almost 500,000 times, baselessly claiming DARPA, a wing of the Department of Defense, started the fires.
I'm here with the fire command team at the Palisades Fire.
Indeed, X's owner, Elon Musk, has spent the last week elevating conspiracy theories about the fires.
What about water availability?
Responding to a post from disgraced conspiracy theorist Alex Jones that the fires are part of a globalist plot, Musk responded, true.
Yeah.
A surprise admission of guilt.
Sorry about that. But no, that's the thing, guys, right there that just, it bothers me. That the simple fact of the matter is that you have idiots. I mean, you're not environmentalists. You're not with the EPA. You're not with the fire department. You're not with the fire academy. You're idiots. You are just idiots that have enjoyed being rich for a while. You're idiots that enjoy being rich for a while. And because of that, you go on Fox News and decide to say, well, this might have been on purpose. I mean, why else would my house have burned down? Because you live in a tinderbox and it's been a drought for a couple of years. What the you expect? At the same time, you have those out there, and again, Alex Jones. Oh dear God, Alex Jones. I thought we were really him. He's already out there spewing his conspiracy theories. Which, by the way, Alex Jones is a nut. I don't know why people listen to him. To me, he's like Joe Rogan if Joe Rogan let himself go. That's how Alex Jones looks like to me. But the thing about it is, folks will believe it. And then you had Facebook, did have fact checking, although it's kind of hit or miss depending on what you got out there. And then Zuckerberg decides, we're going to get rid of fact checkers and we're going to embrace alternative facts. Community notes. Really? See, this is the reason why TikTok exists. Nobody trusts Facebook/Meta. Nobody will trust any of these other apps, but they'll trust TikTok. And because they'll trust TikTok, it's not surprising. At the same time, guys, Elon Musk, who apparently is in the Department of Government Efficiency, a guy whose fortune has become bigger, supposedly arguably the richest man on earth. And he goes, instead of actually clearing up the air, instead of actually especially calming fears, he fans the flames because he sees what Alex Jones does and decides to tweet it or talk about it or just keep the conspiracy theories going. I don't know how else I can say this, guys, except that, this is what we're scared of in 2025. A bunch of idiots in tinfoil hats can influence our government. And that alone should say a lot. But speaking of government, we did have Fox News' former Army personnel, Pete Hegseth, was going through his nomination for being Secretary of Defense. And well, I commend the Democrats for what they did because this needed to happen.
During the COVID hysteria and in their attempt to fire 100,000 people who worked for bigger companies because they didn't get the COVID shot, or to mask 5-year-olds, they decided also to make this a central plank in their policy at the Pentagon. 8,000 well-trained, so we got a recruiting crisis, 8,000 well-trained men and women were fired. Will you commit today, Mr. Hegseth, to recruit these folks back, to give them back pay, and give them an apology from the United States government for how they were disrespected?
Senator, I will commit to this because the commander in chief has committed to this, that not only will they be reinstated, they will receive an apology, back pay, and rank that they lost because they were forced out due to an experimental vaccine.
So what's amazing about this, folks, is that part right there where a lot of people need to understand. That's just one part of Pete Hegseth, where, again, this is the same guy who was on Fox News saying that women shouldn't be in the military, that he, as the Secretary of Defense, wants to bring back a warrior culture, which I think is always funny. They always use those buzzwords. We want to bring back a warrior mentality. We need to be ruthless. We need to be all these things. You sound like a glorified Army commercial, which in this case, which is amazing to me, is that why in the world, for a man who has a history of sexual assault, a history of cheating on his wife, and yet he can't even answer this of all simple questions?
Is the highest level of international negotiations that you have engaged in, that you have led in, because the Secretary of Defense does lead international security negotiations. There are three main ones that the Secretary of Defense leads and signs. Can you name at least one of them?
Could you repeat the question, Senator?
Sure. What is the highest level of international security agreement that you have led? And can you name some that the Secretary of Defense would lead? There's three main ones. Do you know?
I have not been involved in international security arrangements because I have not been in government other than serving in the military. So my job has been to
no. The answer is no. Can you name one of the three main ones that the Secretary of Defense
defense
signs?
arrangements. I mean, NATO might be one that you're referring to.
Status of Forces Agreement would be one of them.
Status of Forces Agreement. I've been a part of teaching about Status of Forces Agreements.
But you don't
inside
remember to
Afghanistan.
mention it? You're not qualified, Mr. Hegseth. You're not qualified. You talk about repairing our defense industrial complex. You're not qualified to that. You could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact
No, you
amount of
couldn't,
nations
because
in
you've
that,
not
but I
even
know we have
bothered to
allies
do-
in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr.
and data
Hegseth,
transfers
none
with
of those
them.
countries
We
are
have
in
allies
ASEAN.
across.
None of those three countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations.
Ooh, again, Senator Duckworth is right. You are not qualified if you can't even name things that are dealing with your potential future job. You were stammering. You were stumbling. You couldn't even answer a question that a Secretary of Defense should know. And during your committee hearing, you got this was going to come up because, again, I give the Democrats credit for this. You had to call Pete Hegseth out on two things: his degradation toward women and the fact of how he treated his marriages the same way he treated his hairline, disrespectfully.
That you referenced a minute ago that occurred in Monterey, California in October 2017. At that time, you were still married to your second wife, correct?
I believe so.
And you had just fathered a child by a woman who would later become your third wife, correct?
Senator, I was falsely charged, fully investigated and completely cleared.
So you think you were completely cleared because you committed no crime? That's your definition of cleared? You had just fathered a child 2 months before by a woman that was not your wife. I am shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? How is that a complete clear?
Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old.
And she was, and
here.
you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you?
Those were false charges.
Well,
It was fully investigated, and I was completely cleared. And I am so grateful for the marriage I have to this amazing woman behind me.
You've admitted that you had sex at that hotel in October 2017. You said it was consensual, isn't that correct?
Anything?
You've admitted that it was consensual, and you were still married, and you just had a child by another woman.
Again,
How do you explain your
completely
judgment?
false charges against me.
You
Fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
You have admitted that you had sex while you were married to wife 2 after you just had fathered a child by wife 3. You've admitted that. Now, if it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
It was a false claim then and a false claim now.
If it had been a sexual assault, that would be disqualifying to be Secretary of Defense, wouldn't it?
That was a false claim.
So you
talking about a hypothetical.
So you can't tell me whether someone who has committed a sexual assault is disqualified from being Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I know in my instance, and I'm talking about my instance only, it was a false claim.
But you acknowledge
And it was
but you
fully
acknowledge
investigated.
that you cheated on your wife and that you cheated on the woman by whom you had just fathered a child. You've admitted that.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, I'm not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
In finalizing divorces from your first and second wives, were there non-disclosure agreements in connection with those divorces?
Senator, not that I'm aware of.
If there were, would you agree to release those first and second wives from any confidentiality agreement?
Senator, it's not something I'm aware of.
But if there were, you would agree to release them from a confidentiality agreement?
Senator, that's not my responsibility.
Did you ever engage in any acts of physical violence against any of your wives?
Senator, absolutely not.
But you would agree with me that if someone had committed physical violence against a spouse, that would be disqualifying to serve as Secretary of Defense, correct?
Senator, absolutely not have I ever done that.
You would agree that that would be a disqualifying offense, would you not?
Senator, you're talking about a hypothetical.
I don't think it's a hypothetical. Violence against spouses occurs every day. And if you as a leader are not capable of saying that physical violence against a spouse should be a disqualifying fact for being secretary of the most powerful nation in the world, you're demonstrating an astonishing lack of judgment. The incident in Monterey led to a criminal charge, a criminal investigation, a private settlement, and a cash payment to the woman who filed the complaint. And there was also a non-disclosure agreement, correct?
It was a confidential settlement agreement off of a nuisance lawsuit.
Right. During an interview, you claimed that you settled the matter because you were worried that if it became public, it might hurt your career. Do you maintain that you were blackmailed?
Senator, I maintain that false claims were made against me. And ultimately,
your attorney
those
used
false
the
claims,
phrase,
I had the opportunity to attest my innocence in those false claims.
But you didn't reveal any of this to President Trump or the transition team as they were considering you to be nominated for Secretary of Defense. You didn't reveal the action. You didn't reveal the criminal complaint. You didn't reveal the criminal investigation. You didn't reveal the settlement. You didn't reveal the cash payment. Why didn't you inform the commander-in-chief of the transition team of this very relevant event?
Senator, I've appreciated every part of the process with the transition team. They have been open and honest with me. We've had great conversations between the two of us. And I appreciate the opportunity that President-elect Trump has given me.
You chose not to reveal this, right? Because you knew it would hurt your chances. So you chose not to reveal this really important thing to the commander-in-chief of the transition team because you were worried about your chances rather than trying to be candid with the future president of the United States. Are there any other important facts that you chose not to reveal to the president-elect and his team as they were considering you to be Secretary of Defense?
Senator, I sit here before you an open book, as everyone who's watched this process.
An open book, he says. An open book, he says. This man did more dancing than a rodeo. And yet, he wants to be Secretary of Defense. Scary thought, isn't it? That a man like him can't answer questions that Secretary of Defense should know, decides not to answer questions about his marital life, questions of sexual abuse, NDAs that were signed so his wife can know his former wives can no longer talk about it. Yeah, he seems like a perfect Trump candidate because Trump only picks the best people. I can't wait for Pam Bondi, Marco Rubio, and the rest of them, because this is just going to be a freaking circus. But moving right along, guys, again, we are seeing the end of, we're seeing what happens when you basically don't hold companies to the fire. What I mean by that is, guys, MSN president Rashida Jones is going to be stepping down because MSNBC is actually going to be split into separate entities. She was basically the runner for, she was basically the president for 4 years, and at the same time, actually doing a very good job as running MSNBC. That also being said, again, she did not want to stick around for this as far as the reorganization goes. But you know who is going to be? Rebecca Cutler, as you can see right there, will be the interim president for now. So it's amazing to me that a lot of people are wondering, well, why is she stepping down? Well, because it is the end of DEI programs. Don't believe me? Here's also Facebook.
Tonight, a major change up in the corporate world as tech behemoths Amazon and Meta are dialing back their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Anti-DEI activist Robbie Starbuck recently telling CNBC,
they're causing division employee on employee, and you're losing money.
Amazon saying in a recent memo, we've been winding down outdated programs and materials. And Meta told employees Friday, given the shifting legal and policy landscape, the company is changing DEI programs focused on hiring, training, and picking suppliers. CEO Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan's podcast Friday.
It's one thing to say we want to be kind of like welcoming and make a good environment for everyone. And I think it's another to basically say that masculinity is bad. And I just think we kind of swung culturally to that part of the kind of the spectrum where, you know, it's all like, okay, masculinity is toxic. We have to like get rid of it completely. It's like,
his comments come as tech giants appear to be trying to make inroads with the incoming president, a vocal critic of DEI policies. And following similar moves from companies like Ford, Walmart, and McDonald's. Still, some companies are bucking the trend. Costco's board urging shareholders to vote against a proposal to reevaluate its DEI policies that they say enhance our capacity to attract and retain employees and satisfaction among its diverse customer base, as the workplace sees a new wave of scrutiny. Emily E.
Yes, because removing DEI programs means that you basically told companies, hey, you're completely okay to be completely discriminatory, and at the same time, guys, you won't be sued for it. That's what's happening with DEI, because again, to basically remind you people, four Chinese students decided to sue Harvard, saying that they've been discriminated against, and the Supreme Court sat there and said, oh, well, we can take part of affirmative action and get rid of the fact of college acceptance. And that should only hurt it. That shouldn't hurt everybody else, right? Right. Also, those 4 Chinese students did not get into Harvard University. What actually happened, guys, is that companies looked at that and said, oh, well, this falls under diversity and inclusion, and we don't need to have that anymore without worry of being sued. Hence why every other company out there, because John Deere did it, Harley Davidson did it, and, you know, those people are screaming because every time they hear DEI, it's like, oh, that's a woke thing. No, it's to ensure a level playing field, because if you're not white, if you're not a man, if you're not, well, basically those two things, then yes, it is significantly harder to get a job or get multiple things because the playing field was not level. At the same time, DEI programs were basically forcing companies to actually be balanced. And at the same time, if you won't, yeah, you can get sued for discrimination. Thanks to Trump and company and the Supreme Court, that's no longer a problem. But what also is a problem is, guys, is education. Because keep in mind, Trump did talk about the fact that he wants to basically let his borders basically have his way with immigrants, which immigrants are worried about, especially those that are going to school, as far as how are they going to deal with it. Because educators have already sat there and said it is going to be a rough time for those, because some of these students may have relatives who are illegal and may get deported. And now, from an educational standpoint, it does put the teachers in a very questionable and between rock and hard place, really. So this is why I keep saying everything from Project 2025 is coming to light. And at the same time, how many more ways can we sit there and say that basically the group that sat there and said this wasn't going to happen, well, it happened. And now what? Illegal immigrants are worried post a week from now. You have education you have education being reevaluated to Christian nationalist standards. At the same time, you have a politician who is basically using his office that he's not even in yet to avoid prosecution. Like I said, I don't blame Michelle Obama for not going to inauguration because, hell, America shouldn't either. But the piece de resistance side of this, guys, is, hey, at least for Will, you couldn't have a story on law enforcement today, right? Oh, I do. And again, I got questions.
A girl was walking home from school when she was detained and handcuffed yesterday, brought to tears over a crime she did not commit. Good evening. I'm Matt Mulcahy.
I'm Megan Coleman. Deputies held her Monday night for about 7 minutes, believing she stole a car. That child's mother is outraged tonight. She spoke with our Connor White. He is live for us in Syracuse tonight. Connor?
Megan, Matt, that video shows that deputies were likely going to bring that little girl downtown until they finally realized that the suspect they were looking for had longer hair than the 11-year-old they had in handcuffs. A walk home from school interrupted by Onondaga County Sheriff's deputies.
Wait, I'm actually so confused. I'm scared.
A young girl starts recording after 2 deputies place her 11-year-old cousin in handcuffs.
You guys can keep going. No, I gotta stay with her.
The deputies explained that this girl matches the description for a young person who allegedly stole a Kia.
Those are Primo pants.
Exact same description.
Yeah.
The children repeatedly tell the deputies that they have the wrong girl. They're ignored.
Girl, you gonna tell me this ain't you?
The deputies insist that the 11-year-old girl in handcuffs is lying, showing them a photo of the suspect. When other deputies arrive and the reality of the situation sets in, she starts crying.
That's not her. Wait, can I?
This child's mother, agreeing to speak to the I-Team anonymously, is beside herself.
She no longer wants to walk to and from school anymore. That was the only freedom she had, and it's now gone.
Eventually, the deputies realize the girl they placed in handcuffs is not their suspect. One of the deputies seems to say that the alleged car thief they're looking for has longer hair.
I'm sorry about it. You matched the description pretty clearly.
Okay, let's go, guys.
Good to go, okay? I'm sorry.
Mom is not accepting the apology.
I can't make sense of it. I couldn't even finish watching the video. Even if it wasn't my child, I wouldn't be able to finish watching the video because that's not how you handle children.
Late this evening, the sheriff's office released a statement saying that Sheriff Tovey Shelley met with the mother this afternoon. He described it as a productive meeting. They also clarified that the deputies, in their opinion, did everything by the book, saying that they are within their right with certain provisions to be able to put juveniles in handcuffs. We've reached back out to see whether or not there was actually a formal apology, as that was not clarified in their statement. Reporting in Syracuse.
So what's crazy about this is, you are 11 years old. You are walking home from school. You are detained by officers because you fit the description of a carjacker. You're 11 years old. How is it that whenever law enforcement detains somebody, that number one, there should be a little bit of common sense? You match the description. Okay. Well, if I match the description, where's the dang car? Where's the car that I allegedly jacked? Because an 11-year-old jacking a car, and you can hear the deputies in the background. Oh, it's possible. But you didn't ask for, you try to sit there and say she matched description. First and foremost, how in the world can we sit there and say law enforcement was able to do everything by the book? You detained a child. You detained a child without its mother. You detained a child without actually having a social worker there to defend for its child, for defending the child's rights. At the same time, where is the apology? As I usually tell people, I want the apology to be as loud as the disrespect. And I get the mother. The mother doesn't want to be on camera out of fear that there may be retaliation. Because let's be honest, law enforcement is the biggest gang in the world. At the same time, those officers, whose name should actually also be given as well, their name should also be given as well. We will never hear from them. And I think that's a mistake. I think that is a mistake. I really do. But at the same time, guys, what about the fact that we are basically, our children can't even walk home from school. Can't even walk home without being detained. And for what? You still haven't caught the person. And again, even the whole story just sounds suspect. An 11-year-old jacked the car, and you went to the 11-year-old that matched description, and the only reason you let her go, outside of that fact her friend was recording, was that, the suspect's hair was longer. Who is giving you guys the descriptions? Gomer Pyle? At the same time, I fear, guys, because it's getting to a point now. It is really getting to a point now to where, as people of color, and this is the reason why I say law enforcement, if you ever do watch this podcast, there is a reason why you will get distrust. You will get everything called by the son of God from people of color because of how you treat them. Because again, you don't try to change your policing. Every time we say police reform or defund the police, you guys immediately turn around and say, well, we know you cry victim. You're military. You're militarized. You have weaponized cars, assault vehicles, things of that nature. You have everything at your disposal, and yet complain when we tell you guys you're not doing your job. You're not policing. You're not protecting and serving. You're overseeing. Because that's what you got. And I say this all the time. The one problem with the training with law enforcement, you guys, a plumber, a nail technician, literally HVAC technicians train longer at their careers than a person training to be a law enforcement officer. 6 months into the academy, and then you're out to protect and serve. Whereas you're only trained to resist and shoot. You're not trained to de-escalate, negotiate, socialize, empathize, and also recognize when you're dealing with children or those of special needs. That's the problem. And so, yes, you're going to find it a little difficult, a little hard for people of color to respond to you or to get sympathy from us when something happens to you. It is what it is. Until police reform happens, it's just like old boy of that former CEO. It's a little hard to care when maybe the circumstances of your outcome led to your demise. That's all I'm saying. But we're going to move on to our feel-good segment because usually, guys, on the Frack We Got Here, we usually cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom and sometimes make you lose faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday. Tomorrow's hump day. Tomorrow being that it's Friday, not hump day, Thursday. We will leave you guys out with some good notes, some good vibes. And this young man has a heart of gold by making sure to keep other people warm and doing something that we really as adults should be doing.
Every time he handed someone a blanket, his smile would just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'd ask him, how's that feel, buddy? He goes, really, really good. We're just spreading the love of Jesus through him and me to the people that need it the most in our city.
Now that right there is a great thing. It really is. And again, just for a kid to really just be able to help and just make sure that others are warm, especially during this winter time, that's a beautiful thing. And I like I said, kids have figured out what we should be figuring out ourselves. And again, not complaining. Beautiful thing. That being said, guys, that's going to do it for this podcast. Thank you all for liking, for watching, for letting people know it's live. I certainly appreciate it. Some shameless plugging before we do get out of here, guys. I do want to talk about blurredstation.com. It is the table, the vehicle to where our content, our viewership, most importantly, our patrons should be going to. Tubi's great, but Tubi is well worth over $100 million. It's owned by the same guy that owns Fox. Why? Because our dollars went to them. Again, those same dollars can be used to uplift us. And a place like Blurred Station is able to do it. Simply put, you go to blurredstation.com, hit the join now button, select the Blurred's Eye View Affinity membership, guys. Really at the bottom. And from there, guys, you can just select me, Black Spartan, or anybody there. Affinity membership, guys, it is $10.99 a month to stream Blur Station. $10.99 a month. At 36 months, you do have the option to own a piece of Blur Station. It's never been easier to own a piece of a media conglomeration network like that. And again, we keep asking for the table. Here it is. Now let's actually build it and let's eat at blurstation.com. Also, check out alwayspressrecord.com or APR TV. Why? Because shows like How the Frack We Got Here can be seen there from any of your smart devices or televisions, and again, other shows as well. Again, another vehicle for us to where our content, our viewership, most importantly, our dollars should be going to. Simply check out alwayspressrecord.com or APR TV anywhere the apps are seen. And also, let me not forget about runforoffice.org, guys. I keep saying this one as well. You want to know how they did it? You want to know how the crazy Christian nationalist right side got elected? Do you want to know how they got people to go along to have to make them kiss the ring of Trump and be elected? Well, this is the genesis of it. If you do feel the call to public service, whether it's local or national, please go to runforoffice.org and type in your address. It'll show you and give you step-by-steps on how you can actually get on the ballot. And once you're actually on the ballot, how to run for office. And if luckily, get elected. Because if you haven't figured out from this last election cycle, we need new blood. Right now, Congress is nothing more than a nursing home with security. There needs to be term limits. There needs to be new people. There needs to be people with actual intelligence. I cannot stress that enough. That being said, definitely check out runforoffice.org. As for me, guys, you can find me, Black_Spartan, on the socials. Where everything can be seen. I do talk to people more than just about the news and comments. I just ask that don't be weird. I don't want to have to get this whole blocking thing. Just don't be weird. At the same time, guys, the podcast can be seen and found, How the Frack We Got Here, wherever podcasts can be seen or heard, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Google, as long as that's still up. And, of course, on Facebook and on Twitch and on YouTube. Definitely like, share, and subscribe, guys, because we simply cannot do any of this without you. That being said, guys, a little bit of hope. Yes, a week from now, Trump will be sworn into office. A week from now is going to be the longest 4 years of our life. Less than a week from now, we got to find reasons to be hopeful. We got to find reasons to keep pushing. We got to find reasons to basically keep the resistance going. So, guys, whether or not it's serving your local community, whether or not it's trying to serve at a national level, again, guys, keep it up. We have to keep up the actions. We have to keep moving forward. We have to keep challenging. We simply cannot be complacent. The only thing I ask besides being, the only thing I keep asking, guys, outside of being hopeful, is to keep fighting, because that is the only way we're going to get through all of this. The last thing I'll say about How the Frack We Got Here, guys, is all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you the information on how to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do better as society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to basically the Supreme Court, Johnny Brown Jackson, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, and maybe one day electing our first Black woman to be the first Madam President. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's what we keep asking ourselves. Why does everything go up at our paycheck? Why are we still electing different people in Congress, but still the same old game? And most importantly, how the Frack We Got Here. Thank you all for watching, guys. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and we will get through this. Peace.